Well, today the topic is fight for your marriage. Last week, Dusty did a fantastic job of saying, let's fight for our family, and he zeroed in on a lot of technology and a lot of the intrusion for our young people and us. And I learned a lot from what he taught us last week. And I was thinking about this. We don't need a lot of rules and instruction here, although I'm going to give you some. What we really need is our hearts opened and maybe our flame rekindled. Maybe our vision cleared. Maybe our lenses cleaned so that we can see where we're going. We need our courage renewed. When we talk about marriage, we're talking about one of the most exciting things in our lives that became one of the scariest things in our lives at times. We're talking about the nurture that we receive from a woman that God has given to us, and we're also talking about many threats we have felt in that relationship. And I know there's probably a kaleidoscope of experience here today. When we talk about marriage, we're talking about the strength we've received from being a couple and possibly a family. But we're also saying, I've experienced more weakness about myself in my marriage than anywhere else in my life. When we're talking about marriage, we're talking about the expectations that we have, the high hopes, and sometimes the bitter disappointments that we've received. We're talking about the pleasure and the pain of marriage. And so I thought, what am I going to say about marriage? And I thought, I'm not going to say anything really new to you today. But what I am going to say is what I say to couples at a couple of hundred weddings that I've done in my life. I haven't used this same message every time, but this is my favorite one, and they're usually there for the first time, so they're only hearing it for the first time. And so I have my little notes that I have that I tuck into a little book that I use, and I want to give it to you because I really think this is what I need to remember. This is what I need. And take yourself back to your wedding if you're married, and you realize that on that day everything changes. Everything changes in your life. All of your habits get exposed. All of your money is now committed. All of your future is no longer solo. You are walking together with another person. Secondly, this is an imperfect person. I'm talking about you, actually. We look in the mirror and we're looking at the second most selfish person in the relationship. This is not Taylor Swift. This is not the woman of our dreams. This is a real person. And the first time we hear her making manly type sounds in the bathroom, we realize, oh yeah, this is not all romance. It's not all diamond rings. This is an imperfect person. And thirdly, the world is against us. It's cynical. It doesn't expect marriage to last. In fact, almost every temptation that's flashed before our eyes is anti-marriage. Whether it's sexual or material or individualism, everything the world throws at us is about me, 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 me. And yet here we are, we're standing at the altar and ready to make this commitment. George Bernard Shaw said this: when two people are under the influence of the most violent, the most insane, the most delusive, and most transient of passions, they are required to swear that they will remain in that exalted, abnormal, and exhausting condition continuously until death do them part. Because mainly we think about marriage as a romantic adventure. But romantic love will not last. If you've been married more than a year, you know that. So I want to take us to 1 Corinthians 13, which is the greatest poetic language about love ever written. It's also the sternest challenge to all of us men who are married or who want to be married. And I want to walk through that very quickly. This is the key part of it. Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never fails. You've heard that so many times that it's kind of like the national anthem. We don't really absorb the challenges that are in there. So I want to give you 2 words at the beginning of this text that I don't know if Paul intended this when he wrote it, but I'm going to outline it this way. It says, love is patient, and there's a bunch of things listed under patience, and it says love is kind, and there's a bunch of things listed under kindness. That's the way I'm going to divide this. One is patience, one is kind. So there's 2 words that I say to a couple who are standing there nervously sweating, wondering when is this diatribe going to end from this pastor so we can kiss each other and be out the door. I say, I want you to remember 2 words. Can you do that? The 2 words are yes and no. Yes and no. Let's start with no. Love says no. In other words, love is patient. Love is patient. Here's what Mike Mason says about it. To be married is to be confronted intimately day after day by the mystery of life, of other life, the life outside of oneself. The loved one is simply there in a way that no other living thing in the world except oneself has ever really been there before. It can be rather a surprise to discover that one is, after all, not alone. At night, in the morning, over meals, in the bath, in the bed, the partner is always there. There in body or there in spirit, there at the back of your mind and there in the pit of your heart, there in a way in which the 2 partners never really get used to one another. He says it with a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but that is so true. So love says no. Love says no. Love says no to reacting reflexively to what I naturally want. It's patient. It pauses. It thinks. It counts to 10. It sees the trajectory of what this response will bring down the road, and it says no. It says no to the provocations and the unpleasant discoveries that you're going to make about this woman and yourself. And you realize this is not a perfect person. Sometimes you wonder if this is really a sane person. And you realize very early in your marriage that you didn't marry a normal person. Because a normal person would have had on her calendar that hunting season is coming. And I needed a new rifle this year. A normal person wouldn't drive on after the heat gauge is flashing red. You know, a normal person would know that dinner is at 5:30 every day. Because that's the way I grew up. A normal person would know how important my father is to me or my mother is to me. A normal person would know this is the way you take care of a dog. You know, a normal person would know all these things, and you realize this person doesn't know any of that and actually doesn't even care about a lot of the stuff that I find valuable. And you realize I married a person who's not normal. And there are 1,000 little irritants in life like this. Paper cuts, little intrusions, tiny conflicts. And what does love do when it encounters an abnormal person? Actually, a normal person, a human being. Love says, no, no, no. I'm not going to react and respond in a way that gets my way. I'm going to respond with patience. And this is not theory. We learn this every day when our expectations are sideswiped by that huge intrusion called my wife. Patience is the daily commute from selfishness to sacrifice. And you can just think about it, how many times today, and this is not negative, this is just how many times do I, as a husband who is stewarding this marriage, need to say no to my own practiced, selfish meism. So here's what love says no to. All these, later in the chapter it says, we put away our childish ways. So it says no to envy, no to boasting, no to pride. It's right there in the text. No to dishonoring, no to self-seeking, no to anger, no to cataloging wrongs, no to savoring revenge. Now, the big hurdle we have here is that the model that we have for this kind of love is Jesus himself. And it says in 1 John chapter 3, verse 16, this is how you know what love is. You know the rest of the sentence? He laid down his life for us. So men, most of you are married. Most of you are married for a long time. Love says no to self every single day. It's patient. It pauses before it reacts. It says no. It's basically the practice of moral and spiritual and emotional ecology that keeps the wellspring. Remember that wellspring? Guard your heart because it's the wellspring of life. Love says, no, I'm not going to pollute the wellspring because everything that comes from the heart comes out of the mouth and goes into my marriage. So I want to say no. I want to be patient. Love says no. Now, when a groom is standing there sweating and the bride is looking into his eyes and she's glowing, I just want him to remember this one word. Say no. Say no to self. I need to do that every day. I'm coming up on, actually, just crossed 53 years with an abnormal person. But I still need to say no to myself every day. Here's what it says in Ephesians chapter 4. You were taught, with regard to your former way of life, to put off your old self. Your old single, but also, when it's talking spiritually, your old sinful self, but put off your old single self for now, which belongs to your former manner of life and is corrupt through deceitful desires. And to be renewed in the spirit of your minds, and to put on the new self, created after the likeness of God in true righteousness and holiness. So I want you to think right now of some recent irritant in your marriage. Maybe it's right on the frontal lobe, or something that you experience frequently. And it's not to say that your wife is a perfect person and you're supposed to be the minion who just bows and stoops and plays fetch-it. That's not what we're talking about. But I want you to examine something in your own heart. I realize I need to say no to an expectation that is not fair to put onto her. I need to say no to an assumption that I was requiring of her and she doesn't even know about it, but I'm angry about it. I need to say no to the catalog that I've been keeping of her imperfections. And I need to forbear who she is as a woman, and perhaps I need to forgive what she is as a sinner. That's your job. Love says no. Mike Mason goes on to say this in his book, The Mystery of Marriage. Love coaxes us and even hoodwinks us into making a decision so radical that if left to our own devices, we would never have entertained it for a moment. For it is a far stranger thing for two people to live together in love all their lives than not to. Like life itself, it involves a decision so staggering that it cannot really be made at all. It can only be grown into, at best consented to, with ever-decreasing reluctance. To put it simply, marriage is a relationship far more engrossing than we want it to be. It always turns out to be more than we bargained for. It is disturbingly intense, disruptively involving, and that is exactly the way it was designed to be. It is supposed to be more, almost, than we can handle. It was meant to be a lifelong encounter that would be much more rigorous and demanding than anything human beings ever could have chosen, dreamed of, desired, or invented on their own. Wow. He says it, doesn't he? That's where we are. Love coaxes us into making this decision, and we have to grow into it day by day by day, decision by decision, paper cut by paper cut, to see God working in our life. And I don't know about you, but I really learned how selfish I am, when I got married. I realized how many unexpressed expectations about, normal people are 15 minutes early, right? Normal people drive in a certain way. Normal people have a certain rhythm in the morning. Normal people do this and that, and I realized how selfish I was. Now, I really realized how selfish I was when we had children. Because those are real intruders into my life. But marriage constantly confronts me with me. So, what's the first word love says? No. It's patient. I'm going to pause. I'm going to think about what was I assuming about me? What's happening to me? What was I expecting about me? And I'm going to say no to that for a moment. And frankly, sometimes I'm right. Actually, once in a while I'm right. But how do I do that? I'm patient. I say no to the snarky response. I say no to the sarcastic remark. I say no to the criticism. I say no to the impatience for just a moment, because that's what love does. Okay, but love also says yes. Whew. Let's get to that. Love says yes. Love is kind. Think about what kind is. Kind is a deliberate, proactive plan to say yes. You're not kind by accident. You're kind because you intend to be kind. So love also says yes. It's proactive. It leans forward. It pursues, it builds, it affirms. Because love is not just about building a fence and guarding our marriage. It's not just about building a wall and protecting ourselves. Because inside that wall is supposed to be a castle. It's supposed to be a home. It's supposed to be a refuge. And inside that fence is supposed to be a vineyard and a garden and a place of joy and celebration. So love says yes. Love doesn't just post a guard. Love plans a celebration. So love says yes. Love is also lavish and generous and giddy and hilarious and joyful and overcoming. So what are some ways that love says yes? Well, here it is, right in the text. It's kind because it rejoices with the truth. Rejoices with the truth. Now, let's take that out of the theological, the philosophical, and let's think about your wife. Love rejoices with the truth of her character, of her gifting, of her beauty, of her sacrifice. And love says yes to that, and it talks about it. It affirms it. It says something about it. Love always protects. It always trusts. It always hopes. It always perseveres. Love never fails. Some of us go through seasons. Some of you in this room are going through seasons where that word perseverance is really on your agenda today. Because you're going through health crises, or you've been through some emotional crises, or you're in a rough spot in your relationship. And perseverance is that one spiritual quality that we most need and least want. Because it says we hang in there even when we can't see the Star-Spangled Banner being played at the end of the day. We stay with it. We persevere. This is what love does. It says yes, often to the hard slog of a season or a crisis or a hurt that we've incurred in our marriage. So let me give you some ways to say yes. Love says yes by discerning and telling the truth to each other and saying it out loud. When was the last time you deliberately planned to be kind to your wife? Not on her birthday, not on your anniversary, not at hunting opener when you bought her a new shotgun. When did you plan? And here's the best way to do it. Words. When's the last time you really affirmed her with your words? Now there's a difference here. A compliment is, hey, thanks for the dinner. That's a compliment. But an affirmation is something like, you know what? I just want to thank you for the care you put in to our home, or to preparing meals for me. See, that's an affirmation. That's a spotlight on her person. And it's great to have compliments about your skill. You know, I like it when people come up to me and say, hey, that was a great illustration in your message today. That's a compliment. It's a whole lot different when someone says, you know, I'm learning under your teaching. Well, when's the last time you affirmed your wife for who she is? A character quality. And maybe it's not about you. Maybe it's, you know, I wish I had the same heart you have for our grandchildren. I watch how tireless you are to invest in them. And I'm amazed at you. It's incredible. I try to say this to my wife because I don't know where she gets her energy for stuff. You know, she spends hours on things, and I go, wow, I couldn't do that. I'm not going to try to replicate it. I'm just going to affirm you and follow in your trail. When's the last time you did that? We love each other and say yes by protecting our covenant through tenderness and laughter, our faithfulness, our cherishing of her. We say yes to love by trusting God and each other when there's no immediate return on the investment. But if we can go at it together, it makes a huge difference, doesn't it? We say yes to love by leaning into hope. First of all, hope in God, and hoping together in adverse circumstances. It makes a huge difference, doesn't it, to travel together into something difficult instead of blaming one or the other or being out of step and syncopated in our walk. If we can hope together. Love says yes by not quitting, by saying yes to the long haul, by persevering despite the headwinds that we face. And I don't know the condition of your marriage, but I can say quite confidently that nobody here has a perfect marriage. That's why actually in a month you can take a course called The Art of Marriage. One of the things that enriched my marriage, our marriage together, Next weekend. 25th and 26th of October. I knew that. This is October? Thanks, Todd. Todd's on the team.
Todd was patient and kind with that.
Yeah, he was. He was very patient. And I want to affirm his ministry to us. Yes. Thank you, Todd. Yeah, next weekend. Yeah. Joanne and I were privileged to be invited to be on the speaker team for Family Life for their Weekends to Remember. And this was some 25 years ago. And we felt really privileged to be asked. And I said, man, honey, this will be great. Now we can just go share everything we've learned. And Joanne said, no, now you can learn everything you've been sharing. And she was right. It was so good for us to be exposed constantly, at least 4 times a year, and then with the team. Not only what we were delivering, but being around other couples who were growing. And everybody on the team, these are some really high-rolling evangelical leaders. Every single one of them would say, man, our marriage is not perfect. We got stuff. And they would talk about it publicly, but we saw them working at it. So don't be ashamed to come to a marriage event thinking, oh, we're the remedials. No, man, it's exciting to go to something that builds your marriage. Besides, your wife might hear something she needs to hear. Actually, that's not a bad motive, but that shouldn't be your own motive. So I've got in your notes here this little ad here called Join the Kindness Challenge. I really encourage you to go to that website. It's by Shanti Feldhahn. And it'll take you on a 30-day, don't tell your wife you're doing it, just do it. Go to the website, and every day it'll give you a little prompter of something kind you can do. And you may think, oh, that's lame, I can't do that. Well, it'll spark you to do something else. Little kindnesses. Your marriage is not going to be enhanced or saved or rescued. It's not going to reach a plane of giddiness and hilarity in one fell swoop. It's going to be installments. Love is kind. It moves toward. It's the thing we lack. We tend to want to get in our Barco lounger and let marriage happen, and it will not. We'll just drift toward isolation. So go there. Joanne and I did this a couple years ago, and there's one remaining fruit from that. I was trying to think, well, what could I do that's kind for her? And I went by the sink, and it was full of dishes, and it wasn't orderly like it should have been. The way I would do it, everything ends up in the sink, and you have to unload everything so you can use the sink. It's like, you don't put everything on your workbench. Anyway, I'm telling you too much about my wife. But I went by the dishes, and the one thing that was true was that the dishes weren't getting done. It would get done, but they were there. And I went by and I thought, oh, man, I don't want to do that. And the thought hit me, she doesn't want to do it either. I've done the dishes a lot since then. And we don't have a whole lot because there's just 2 of us. But, I've done the dishes a lot. And I say to her, it's kind of a joke. I said, she'll say, well, thanks for doing the dishes. I said, well, I really didn't want to. But she knows I've overcome my selfishness, and I want, that's a volitional choice. I want to do these dishes out of kindness. But I didn't really feel like it at the time. Take the kindness challenge and just quietly start doing some little installments in your marriage. Because this is so true. We're either moving toward oneness, one increment at a time, or we're drifting toward isolation. So if the drift has been pronounced, start moving back. Start moving back. So the question is, how badly do you want this marriage? How badly do you want this marriage? Well, then do what you want. not what you feel, not what triggers you at the moment. Do what you want. What do you want? You want to say no to selfishness, and you want to say yes to intimacy. That's what I want. That's a choice. That's the will. That's volition. So I overcome what I feel like at the moment, and I do what I want. So I want to give you a couple of quick exercises. Number one, start full every day. In Ephesians 5, it says, therefore, be imitators of God. Whew, that's a high bar. But look at the next phrase. As dearly loved children. Start full. You are loved by God. Start full on His love. You can't do this yourself. Years ago, Larry Crabb taught me an illustration I've never forgotten. He said most marriages resemble a tick on a dog relationship. There's a parasite seeking a nourishing host to suck life out of them. And most of our songs, most of our romantic songs are that way. You know, I can't live without you, I'll die without you. You know, I'm a slug on the sidewalk of life without you. You know, I'm just this helpless tick. And he said that the tragedy is that too many marriages after 18 months realize there's 2 ticks and no dog. That's the only thing you're going to remember. But the point is this. You need to start full. Your wife's not going to fill you up. She is going to take life out of you. Not because she wants to, but she's that other person who's there. Start full. Secondly, stay in school. Stay in school. You have a human being who is of eternal value and incredible mystery and huge frustration, but stay in school. Learn her. Learn who she is. And thirdly, give lavish gifts. A lavish gift like forbearance. You know what forbearance is? It's just being patient with the way she does things that are not morally offensive. They're not a sin. It's just the way she puts her stuff on the countertop and takes all your space. It's that she's a rapper at night. When she rolls over, she takes all the blankets with her, you know. That is not a forgivable sin. That's a forbearing growing up. There's so many things of another human being that are not morally offensive. We just need to forbear. That's a lavish gift. You don't have to talk about it. Just buckle up, buttercup. Secondly, a big gift is forgiveness. We do need to forgive. We need to deal with our sin and with their sin, and we need to give understanding, but we need to give forgiveness. So, if you want this marriage to grow, do what you want in this marriage. Say no to what you don't want and say yes to what you do want. And you know, Paul, when he was writing 1 Corinthians 13, wasn't writing a marriage poem. He was writing to a church. He was writing to people. And he was writing to people in the rough and tumble of life, in the commerce of daily life. This is supposed to walk into real life. It's not being lived out on a romantic balcony. It's being lived out in your home, in your life, with your struggles and with your wife. So love says no and love says yes. I love what, again, Mike Mason is so quotable about marriage. He said, love has convinced you that you're the greatest couple in the world. Marriage will ask you to prove it. That's the last word I have with couples who are standing there nervously. And then I say, now, you may kiss your bride. And I get to introduce them. Well, maybe it's been a while since your wedding. And maybe a lot of the shine is gone from that, but there is still tremendous growth to be taking place in our lives. So, guys, one of the most intimate things we can talk about with other men is our marriages. And so let's talk about some things around our tables and deepen our walk with God. Thank you.